I gave myself the assignment of going to the gym 6 days a week. Every day, I would do 45 minutes of elliptical, and I would do 3 days of weight training, about half an hour, only arms. And I decided that I didn't need to do legs because I was working out with the elliptical, so that should take care of legs. That was wrong. More to that later. But I wanted to talk about the time that I spent in the elliptical. I would go early in the morning before work, and I would spend 45 minutes on the elliptical 6 days a week. Felt like a lot of time, and it was. And I want to talk about that experience and what that what that felt like. In the beginning, I was 50 pounds overweight. My waist was 42 inches. I was very uncomfortable. I was in the worst shape I'd ever been in my life, and I remember it was hard. It was very, very difficult doing 45 minutes in the beginning, and I did it day after day after day. And I remember how I felt like, was it doing any good? I don't know. But every day I would go because I said I was going to do this for 120 days, come heck or high water. So it didn't matter if it didn't feel like it was doing anything. The promise I made myself was 120 days. I had to do it from February 24th to June 24th of 2021. And that's what I was going to do. But in those days, in those weeks, in those first few months, it didn't feel like it was doing much. And it also felt pretty discouraging because here I was getting up really early every day doing it. And I was still overweight. I was still obese. Granted, the scale was going down, but it still felt like a long, long, long road. And it was hard being on the elliptical, being out of breath, being very sweaty, being very uncomfortable. Um, it was not, it wasn't fun, but 45 minutes every morning. And I keep repeating that, but it's a lot of time to sustain, especially if you're not been active really before, or you had a long period of not being active. And there's a lot of self doubt that creeps in. The self doubt, I would go on YouTube. I would, at times, I would watch things that would help me, I don't know, deal with the psychological aspect of what I was going through and feeling like I couldn't make it. And for some reason in my head, I started thinking about Rocky, the movie Rocky. And I would watch the scenes, the fighting scenes from Rocky, and like excerpts of the movie itself. But I remember watching the fight scene, the final fight scene in Rocky One, and Apollo versus Rocky, and I thought about that in relationship to what I was going through, and I realized that I am both. I am Apollo and I am Rocky. And the Apollo in me was the person that was in charge my whole life, that first 46 years of my life, which was not paying attention to how I was eating what I wanted, knowing that, a lot of the choices that I make were not great, but deciding that that was more important to me. And that person was in charge. Apollo was the champ. He was the reigning champ. And although in the movie, we know that Rocky wins, right? But you can feel it during the movie. You're like, wow, this is like, how is he going to overcome this? How is Rocky going to be able to defeat? Rocky has a trainer, he has money, he has the title already. He has all this power, and he's giving Rocky a shot. He's giving it for a promotion, right? Just to promote himself and to make him, you know, uh, so to advance his own career. And but he's giving Rocky a shot, and Rocky is this basically nobody, um, doing doing some shady stuff, to earn a living and doesn't have a lot of support, doesn't have a lot of money, and is going to try, but more than likely, it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, going against the champ. Anyway, I kept thinking about that in my head. I am both. I am Apollo and I am Rocky. And the Apollo in me is the one that was already, he was that person in charge this whole time. And Rocky was the person I was trying to be, the person getting up every morning, going to the gym, making a change, committing to doing this 120-day challenge, doing something that I had never done before. Well, I digress, but I had done it before, but in a different manner and in a different situation altogether. But I took what I had learned from that and I also applied it to this. But I'm going to get back to Rocky. So I would watch the scenes and, it's very riveting, right? It's, you're actually, you're rooting for Rocky. You want Rocky, you want Rocky to win. And in Rocky 1, it ends up being that Apollo still wins, but Rocky, he gets to the end. He goes 15 rounds. He gets hit and he comes back up. He gets hit and he comes back up. And that courage to not stay down, to not give up, to keep going. And, obviously it was, a wonderful, wonderful movie. And I was thinking to myself, this is my 120 days. If I can get to 120 days completing this, logging every meal, measuring my food, eating healthy, understanding more about nutrition, learning a little bit more about nutrition, focusing on whole foods and nutritious foods, and exercising, weightlifting, doing all these things, being dedicated to doing this. So also, I remember that logging my weight, I knew that the other reason I decided to do 120 days, actually, why don't I tell the story now? So 120 days, I had decided I was going to make a commitment to getting this done in terms of a time frame of 120 days, because from the age of 23, I had been investing. I had invested in my 401k. I was diligent about saving, and I had a lot of interest in personal finance. And at the time, when I was almost 46 years old, I understood the benefit of investing. I understood, that you have to be in it for the long term, and the results will be fantastic. They're great. There are times where it can be very volatile, but if you're doing everything correctly, then it works. It definitely works, but you have to be dedicated to the consistency of it. So I had invested every month for 23 years. So 12 months by 12 years is 144. And it was almost 24 years. So that's 288 months. And I decided, well, I won't do 288 days, but I'll do 120 days. And I'll equal 1 month of investing to 1 day of being committed to doing this. And I made pretend that all of this was a mutual fund. As weird as that sounds, I made pretend this was a mutual fund. And my deposit could only happen if I had weighed myself, logged my food, ate healthy, and exercised. That was me making a deposit. The result did not matter. It was me doing the action and being consistent with the action and doing it for 120 days. So the reason that also helped me is that, and I'll talk about this at another time as well, but motivation is a false god. Don't need motivation. If I know that I have to do it, as part of a plan, I'm going to do it because that's part of the plan. Like investing, I had done that for years. I'm going to do this and I'm going to pretend that I'm the investment. I only have one body. I better invest it in myself. And that helped me, especially getting up in the morning really early, really, really early. The first thing I would think of is, oh, I just have to do this. Not, oh, I don't want to, I don't feel like it today. And I would tell myself the night before, whether you feel like it or you don't feel like it, you are a robot, you're going to get up and you're going to do it. Now, it sounds simple. It sounds like I might be, some kind of superhero. I don't mean it to sound like that at all. Like I have some kind of, superpower to be able to do this. I didn't have it all these other years, but it just took me understanding something else that I had been good at and applying it to this. And once I took the emotion out of it and understanding that I didn't need motivation, that really did help because I'm not motivated to invest. Like I'm not motivated to, I don't know, brush my teeth or, do certain functions. I tried to think of doing this 120 days like that, in that mindset. Now, it was very difficult at times to continue to do this. So I would spend that time, that 45 minutes on the elliptical. I would do a lot of things. There were times where I would listen to music. There were times where, I would watch certain shows or I would learn more about exercising or whatever. And on the days that I felt low, because there were days that I felt low, I would go back and I would rewatch Rocky. And I could see that, I was making progress. I could see as the weeks, the days turned into weeks and then turned into longer, I could start seeing some big differences. And I remember watching Rocky 2 and watching the final scene in Rocky 2 as well. And I remember the other piece, like the one where, at one part of the fight scene where it's getting later in the fight and Apollo comes up to Rocky and they're just about to fight and they're hitting the gloves and he says to Rocky, "You're going down." And you can feel it. I remember feeling it. I remember feeling that, like, he's telling him, "You're going down, you're going to be defeated." And me, the old me, saying, "You can't do this. 46 years you've been living like this. You ain't going to change. How are you going to change? Yeah, you're just a flash in the pan." And Rocky saying to Apollo, "No way. No way." There was another piece of the movie, I can't remember if it was in one or two, where Rocky had gone down several times and got back into the corner or whatever. It didn't get, they didn't stop the fight or anything like that. But I remember he says, "I'm not going down again. I'm not going down again." That gave me courage. That gave me strength too. Because that, again, I kept thinking of myself as these two people. I am both Apollo and I'm Rocky. And Rocky is who I wanted to be. I want Rocky to win. I want Rocky, the one who's showing up every day, the one that's doing this for myself, the one who's trying to save me. I want him to win. I want that piece of me to win. And that really, really did help. And day 120 came, and I lost 29.1 pounds. And as that was approaching, I kept thinking, I just wanted to get healthier. I was in a danger zone. But at that point, probably around like day 90, day 100, I say to myself, I only got 20 more days of this, but I wonder, could I keep going? I think I could keep going. What happens if I go beyond the 120 days? What else could I do? Could I like get back to, some other level that I can't even, can I do it? And as I was getting closer to 120 days, I decided that I was going to continue forward after the 120 days. But I will say, having that time frame knowing that I was going to be committed. I made a promise and I was going to do it and I was going to keep it come heck or high water. It helped because there were days that I had cravings that were really, really, really difficult. I was a cakes and cookies person. I viewed that as a food group. And there is nothing wrong with those, but I indulged every day in that. And those are very important to me. And definitely in the first several weeks, I had a lot of cravings. I was sometimes beside myself wanting those things. And um, I knew that, some is okay, but I knew that I had to abstain from that during that time because I knew that that could trigger me into derailing altogether, and I wasn't going to do it. And besides, I was trying to pack in as much as I could. So in order for me to do that, I was going to eliminate cakes and cookies. But the cravings were still there. But in my head, I would tell myself, well, that's okay. I can have a whole cake. I can have a whole tray of cookies. I can have both on day 120. Yes, of course. Every time, oh, I want chocolate. I want this. I want it so bad. Yeah, no problem. I would tell myself, you can have all of that on day 120. So around, I don't even remember, maybe about day 60, day 70, something like that. Those cravings you know, had gone way down. That noise had gone down significantly to the point where I didn't need to use that as a failsafe to get out of that. But that 100, being committed to 120 days all in, made a difference for my life. So I'm going to leave it there. 120 days. That was my commitment. February 24th to June 24th. And that was the beginning. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please write a comment, uh, put a message there. If there's anything that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. And hopefully this makes an impact for you. And if it gives you a little bit of inspiration on your health journey, I'm happy.